In order to have an heir, the emperor was forced to favor his witches. Not only that, they even had to strictly control the time and position of their beds. Although the emperor was extremely reluctant, but under the urging of the soldiers outside the door, he could only remove the satin from the witch's face. The witch felt the emperor's action. Tears of humiliation were left in her eyes. And the reason why they did this, because the Empress Dowager wanted to pass on the royal lineage. She urged him and the Empress to have a child as soon as possible. After learning that they failed again, the Empress Dowager's face turned dark. She decided to watch them having sex tonight. And not just her. She will also call all the doctors to see what the problem is. When the emperor heard this, he finally couldn't stand the Empress Dowager's absurdity. For the first time, he went against the Empress Dowager's wishes. The Empress Dowager was so angry that she overturned the table. The emperor got up and left in anger. The empress did not dare to stay. The Empress Dowager sent someone to summon the protector, which Hancho, as the protector of the kingdom. Hancho's status can be imagined. She ordered someone to hold the empress and take off her clothes. Then she put a yellow talisman on the queen's abdomen and beat her with a blood-stained rattan, in order to remove the turbid cha from the empress' body and make her pregnant. But the yellow talisman on the empress's abdomen was not burnt out, which meant that she could not get pregnant. The Empress Dowager was shocked to hear this. She asked Hancho for a solution. Hancho said that only black magic spells could make the crown prince be born in the queen's womb. The Empress Dowager was in a dilemma. She knew that the Black Witch curse was forbidden. When used, it can even affect the fate of the country, but for the sake of the crown prince's birth, she could not care less. She then agreed to Hancho's suggestion. When Hancho went out of the palace, he met Lord Cho, who was in charge of the Star Chamber. Lord Cho knew that Hancho was going to use black magic to change her destiny and warned her sternly against it. Black magic will bring bad luck to the whole country. He said he would not stand by and do nothing. But then he was removed from his post by the Queen Mother, and gave the Star Chamber to Hancho. Lord Cho must have known that the Empress could not conceive, but he kept it a secret. But that doesn't matter now. Lord Cho begged the Empress not to listen to Hancho's spells. If the forbidden technique is used, the consequences will be disastrous. The whole country will fall into Hancho's hands. But the Empress Dowager, who was desperate for a child, could not listen to such advice. She ordered him not to enter the palace without her summons. Meanwhile, on the other side of the palace, Heiran, a courtesan, woke up from a nightmare. She rushed out the door and ran into Hancho. Heiran says the emperor is in danger. She begged Hancho to save him. And the truth is just as Heiran said. The emperor had a sudden illness in his chambers. Luckily, he was saved in time. Hancho was surprised how Heiran knew. Heiran said he was born with the ability to hear voices, and those voices will definitely happen in the future. Hancho was surprised to hear that there was a witch in the palace with such extraordinary abilities. Such a witch would be perfect for the emperor. Although Heiran tried to resist, but she's just a servant girl. She can't fight back. One more word and she'd be killed. At night, the emperor was escorted into his chambers. Looking at the woman on the bed who has been waiting for a long time, the emperor was not interested at all, but the sergeant at the door kept urging him that it was time. The emperor had no choice but to solely remove the woman's veil, in order to conceive the dragon seed. All the doctors and officers were outside the door to supervise the whole process. They can't even change their positions. Perhaps it was destiny. Heiran lost her appetite soon after she went to bed. Heiran was touched by the queen's care, but she didn't know that she was falling into the trap of the Empress and Hancho. After the doctor's diagnosis, Heiran was pregnant. When Hancho found out about it, he decided to perform a black magic spell to transfer Heiran's baby to the queen's womb. This was cruel to Heiran, but who cares about the feelings of a courtesan? Late at night, Hancho was about to cast the spell, but a knife was held to his neck. It was Lord Cho. He warned Hancho to stop or he would show no mercy. Hancho was emboldened to turn around and scoff. Just as Lord Cho swung his sword, the Empress Dowager and her men arrived just in time. Lord Cho was outnumbered and taken down by the guards. Hancho had already summoned the black vermilion bird with his black magic. The black vermilion bird hovered above for a moment and then rushed out. Lord Cho broke away from the guards and chased after him. The black vermilion bird rushed out and went straight to Heiran's place. Heiran was unaware of the danger. As the black vermilion bird crept into her body, Heiran began to struggle in pain. Her body was strangely suspended in the air. A moment later, the black bird flew out of her body with the fetus. Heiran also fainted. Lord Cho was too late. Seeing that he couldn't stop it, he rushed to send out a flare. His teammates in ambush by the palace raised their shields with strange patterns, reflecting the moonlight. The light from the shields of the four of them formed a shield that covered the palace. Black vermilion bird tried to charge but was bounced back. Hancho inside the palace was also injured. She then cast a spell to move dark clouds to block the moonlight. At the same time, she sent her archers to attack the 4 of them. One of the warlocks couldn't hold back and fell off the roof. As the shield in his hand cracked, the shields of the 3 of them shattered as well. The black vermilion bird rushed into the palace and flew into the Empress with the fetus. After a painful struggle, the fetus was successfully transferred to the Empress. The Empress Dowager was very happy to learn the news the next day. She promised to reward Hancho, but Hancho said it wasn't over yet, because Heiran wasn't dead. Heiran must be eliminated if the child is to be born. A group of swordsmen sneaked into Heiran's room at night, and the leader was Hancho. At that moment, Heiran realized what Hancho had done to her. She angrily accuses Hancho of being the protector of the kingdom and using black magic to jeopardize the country's safety. Hancho orders her subordinates to do it. Heiran grabbed a short sword to fight back and fled. She ran into the Empress at the door. Heiran begged the queen to save her, but she didn't realize that the queen was also working with Hancho. Then Hancho chased her out. She ordered her subordinates to bring out Heiran's mother and brother. At Hancho's command, Heiran's mother and brother fell into a pool of blood. At that moment, Heiran's witch potential was completely stimulated by her hatred. She sprinted and grabbed Hancho by the neck. The guards behind her tried to stop her, but Heiran's powerful will shook them away. Just when Hancho's life was at stake, a dagger was plunged into Heiran's back. The one who did it was the Empress. Heiran realized that she had been abandoned by everyone. And then a baby's cry came to her ears. She told the queen that she was carrying a baby. Heiran placed her hand on the queen's belly. He then cursed the baby to die on her 17th birthday. With Hancho's stab, Heiran's voice stopped. Soon it was time for the queen to give birth. Just as Heiran said, the queen gave birth to a pair of twins. But she had the princess thrown away, because in ancient times, the birth of a child of a dragon and a phoenix was a bad omen for the royal family. The existence of a princess will bring disaster to the crown prince. Besides, the 2 children have Heiran's curse on them. Hancho said there's only one way out of this situation. That is to transfer the curse from the crown prince to the princess and kill her. That way, he could save the crown prince's life. The queen couldn't help but cry, though she felt a great deal of sadness in her heart. She had no choice but to save the royal bloodline. But it's not easy to kill the princess, because she has a cursed constitution, so only the crown prince, who is also a dragon and phoenix child, could kill her. But the crown prince, who is still a baby, is obviously unable to do so. So there is only one last way. That is to burn the princess to death with the 3 devils' fire. But Lord Cho is the only one who knows how to use the 3 devils' fire. Since he prevented Hancho from casting the spell, Lord Cho has been imprisoned in the dungeon. Hancho carried the princess to Lord Cho and explained to him what happened. Although he resented Hancho for using the black magic spell. But this is the end of the matter. In order to save the life of the crown prince, Lord Cho had no choice but to comply. The next day, Lord Cho set up a spell and put the princess in the firewood. Lord Cho placed his hand on the firewood. The 3 devils' fire began to spread quietly. Hancho watched from afar. The princess's cries were gradually muffled, and all the feuds came to an end. 17 years have passed. The crown prince, who was just a baby then, has grown into a man. Seeing her grandson's healthy appearance, the Empress Dowager was overjoyed. She then asked the crown prince what he wanted for his birthday, because tomorrow was the crown prince's 17th birthday. But the crown prince looked preoccupied and said he didn't want anything. The Empress and the Empress Dowager saw that the crown prince was in a bad state and asked why. The crown prince said, it's because he's been dreaming a lot lately. In his dreams, he always sees a girl crying, and that girl looked very similar to himself. The Empress and Empress Dowager heard the crown prince's description, and his expression immediately became unnatural. When the prince saw their faces, he asked them about it, but the Empress made up an excuse to get rid of her. The Empress immediately called Hancho. She told Hancho to pay extra attention to the prince's safety tomorrow, because tomorrow is the day Heiran cursed the crown prince. Then she talked to Hancho about the crown prince's dream. She asked Hancho again if she really killed the princess. Hancho said that she and the princess were linked by a spell. She said that she was alive and well, which meant that the princess must be dead. She told the queen not to worry. But after she left the house, she remembered the queen's dream about the crown prince and became suspicious. Meanwhile, in a village below the imperial city, a strange legend was circulating. The people here said that a female ghost lived in the woods not far away. Anyone who steps into the woods has never come out alive. The clothes of the dead are made into kites by the ghost and hung high in the woods, as if to warn the world not to set foot in the woods. Today, Suwo, the son of the richest man in the village, is making life difficult for his brother, Sujun. They share the same father and mother, but their status is very different, because Suwo's mother is the head of the family, and Suchun's mother was just a slave girl. Suwo knows that Sujun has been trying to raise money to buy back his mother's slavery, so he deliberately made a bet with Sujun. He would give him 500 taels of silver if he could retrieve the kite from the forest. Everyone around could see that he was playing a trick on Sujun, but with the money, he could save his mother's life. Sujun agreed to do it. Then he decided to go into the woods. Although his friend was timid, he couldn't bear to see Sujun alone, so he accompanied him. Along the way, they went through all kinds of traps. He was hung from a tree and wet his pants. In the end, he couldn't bear the fear and ran away, and Sujun met a white tiger. Watching the kite getting closer and closer to him, Sujun took out his dagger and refused to give in. After a series of battle of wits, Sujun successfully lost the white tiger. After that, the path became smooth. He traveled through the woods. Then he came to a golden meadow. Next to the grass stood a simple house. The house was surrounded by spales. Is it to seal the legendary female ghost? But it's all just Suchun's guess. He plucked up the courage to ask if there was anyone in the house but got no answer. He had no choice but to cross the spales and enter the yard. After looking around, he realized the kite was hanging from a tree in the yard. He climbed up but couldn't reach the board, so he took out a knife and cut the thread. At that moment, he thought he could see his mother's freedom. But suddenly a white dove flew by. Sujun was so scared that he fell from the tree. The kite flew away with the wind. He was so upset. An iron pot knocked him unconscious. When he woke up, he found himself tied to a tree. Not far away, a girl was holding the iron pot. Sujun asked her who she was. But the girl said, "You broke into my house and now you're asking me who I am." Sujun explained that it was all a misunderstanding. He asked the girl to untie him first, then he could explain. The girl gradually put down the iron pot in her hand. Sujun looked at the beautiful girl in front of him and didn't want to believe that she was the ghost. But he remembered his best friend's story that female ghosts would take the form of beautiful women to seduce people, and then need people's hearts when they're not ready. Seeing the spales all around, Suchun's heart began to panic. No wonder she had a headache from the moment she entered the room. The girl was speechless. At that moment, Sujun began to say some incantations. The girl thought he was making a lot of noise, so she took a radish and shoved it into his mouth. Sujun thought the girl was going to do it and begged for mercy. The girl thought for a moment and said she'd let you go, but she must do one thing for me. It turns out the rumored female ghost wanted to eat the persimmons on the tree, not people. Sujun was speechless. He told the girl that if she wanted to eat, she could come out and get it herself. After hearing Suchun's words, the girl became a bit sad. She said she couldn't step out of the spell. Sujun saw her say that and picked persimmons. As she watched Sujun pick the persimmons, a smile appeared on the girl's face. Then she took a bite out of the persimmon. It felt like she was eating some kind of delicacy. Afterwards, during their conversation, she realized that the kite was missing from the tree. The girl blamed Sujun for losing her only toe. Sujun felt guilty after hearing that. Seeing that there were kite-making materials nearby, she thought of making a new one for the girl, but it lacked a skeleton. The kite was a mess. The girl couldn't help but look at her with disdain. Sujun wanted to make another one. The girl said she didn't want the trouble. The two of them started pulling on the kite. Sujun pulls the girl into his arms. The girl, who had never seen the outside world, was curious about Suchun's body. Instead of being shy like other girls, she exclaimed that Suchun's chest was so strong. Sujun was confused by this behavior. He quickly pushed the girl away and told her that girls can't be so rude. The girl seems to have thought of something. She threw a wink at Sujun. Sujun looked confused. The girl took out a book with a puzzled look on her face. It says that if a woman winks at a man, his nose will bleed. She exclaimed that Sujun was not a simple man. Then she winked at him again and again. At that moment, the girl's face changed. Someone was calling her name. She told Sujun to leave quickly. If dad sees him, he'll be dead. Just after Sujun left, two people came over. The girl's name was Yanhi, and the father she's talking about is Lord Cho. Lord Cho looked at Yanhi's panic and thought she was going to run out of the yard. Then he gave her a lecture. He told her not to go out of the range of the spell, and he was a bit disappointed. But she listened to Lord Cho. Mrs. Cho also brought new clothes for Yanhi. But when she heard Yanhi call her mother, Mrs. Cho's face became distant. All this was seen by Sujun, who was hiding outside the wall. He began to sympathize with Yanhi. It turned out that Yanhi was the princess who should have died 17 years ago. 17 years ago, the emperor couldn't bear to see his daughter die, so he approached Lord Cho and asked him to keep his daughter alive no matter what. The whole country's luck was eroded by Han Cho's black witchcraft. The emperor had a strong feeling in his heart. Maybe only his daughter can save the country. After 17 years of searching, Lord Cho finally found the location of the Green Lantern Temple. It is rumored that there is a forbidden book of magical healing in the Green Lantern Temple. Inside is a book that contains a way to break the curse on Yanhi. Lord Cho decided to leave for the Green Lantern Temple immediately. At the same time, he also told his subordinates to be vigilant. He mustn't reveal the news that Yanhi is still alive, because if Hancho finds out that Yanhi is still alive, Hancho will surely sacrifice his life to the black witchcraft. Ever since Sujun left, Yanhi has been obsessed with Sujun her heart. Then Lord Ko's son, Fan Yan, came to see her and brought her a wine lantern. Tomorrow night is the annual wine lantern festival. Fan Yan told Yanhi that if she wrote a wish on a piece of paper and released it together with the lantern, the wish will come true. Yanhi was very happy, but the next moment she became sad, because she couldn't go out of the yard. Even if she wrote a wish, she couldn't fly the kite. Fan Yan said he could fly it for her. Then your wish will come true. Looking at Yanhi's serious wishing face, Fan Yan couldn't help but feel sorry for her. She's such a nice girl, but she be stuck here for the rest of her life. What kind of loneliness and fear is that? Yanhi gave Fan Yan the note with her wish. Fan Yan wanted to see what she wished for, but she stopped him. She said it wouldn't work if she read it. Fan Yan's repeated visits to Yanhi aroused Lord Ko's suspicion. He asked Fan Yan if he was in love with Yanhi. Fan Yan admitted it graciously. Lord Cho tried to stop him. He said that Fan Yan should never fall in love with Yanhi. It turned out that Yanhi was the princess who should have died 17 years ago. Her birth mother made a curse before she died that she would die on her 17th birthday. If she didn't die, then everyone who loved her and everyone she loved would die. That's why Lord Cho strongly opposed Fan Yan's love for Yanhi, but he never told Fan Yan why. Unaware of the truth, Fan Yan left in anger. On the other hand, the witch Han Cho began to suspect that Yanhi wasn't dead, so she sacrificed her black sparrow to look for Yanhi. Hearing the horrible sound outside the house, Yanhi locked the doors and windows. He curled up and hid under the blanket. I don't know how long it took for the strange noises outside the door to fade away. Instead, there was the sound of a man falling. Yanhi had the courage to go out to check. He saw Sujun covered in wounds. It turns out that during the day, Sujun saw Yanhi's kite being blown away by the wind on his way back. He thought the kite was very important to Yanhi, so he climbed up the rock wall to retrieve the kite, but he slipped and fell from the height. When he woke up again, it was already dark. He took the kite and went back to Yanhi's house. Yanhi took out his medicine chest and bandaged his wounds. He even mocked him for his stupidity. After bandaging his wounds, Yanhi said he'd stay with him for the night. When Sujun heard this, he remembered the way Yanhi had acted during the day, and he refused. He was about to leave. He walked out of the courtyard with a determined look on his face. But as soon as he stepped out of the courtyard, the low roar of a wild animal came from deep in the woods. Suchun's heart was suddenly lost. He had no choice but to turn back. Yanhi let him sleep under the eaves of the house. There was a window between them. Because of their tragic lives, the two of them chatted about it. Sujun was pessimistic and thought he shouldn't have been born. But Yanhi, who's not familiar with the world, has an optimistic mindset. She believes that no matter how high or low, everyone is born for a reason, and a person's life is a search for that reason. You and I will have a reason to live, too. Yanhi's optimism infected Sujun as well. The two of them fell asleep with smiles on their faces. And outside the courtyard, the black jade bird attacked again. The scales around them lit up and turned into two ferocious wolves. The black vermilion bird was driven away by the two wolves. The next day, Lord Cho and his party arrived at the Green Lantern Temple. He found a book in the withered vines of the temple. When he opened it, it was the Forbidden Book of Magic Doctors. It really contains a way to break the curse of Yanhi. As long as the 108 candles in the temple are lit before the North Star disappears, Yanhi's curse will be lifted. But if all the candles are not lit before the disappearance of the North Star, then the cursed person will die. And lighting the candles is not that simple. Each candle requires the sincere soul of the person who wishes to light it. There are now 5 years until the North Star disappears. In order to save Yanhi and this country, Lord Cho decided to use this method. On the other hand, Fan Yan knows nothing about this. As he walked along the bustling street, he looked at the wind lanterns carried by other girls and thought of Yanhi. Out of love for Yanhi, he couldn't help but open Yanhi's wish. It turned out that Yanhi's only wish was to go out of the courtyard and see the outside world. For many years, she spent the Wine Lantern Festival alone in this desolate forest. Listening to the bustle of the outside world, she felt sad. Every time she flew a kite, she would let the kite show her the outside world. Fan Yan couldn't bear to see Yanhi so lonely. Today was Yanhi's birthday. He proposed to take him to fly a wishing lamp. Although she was looking forward to it, she remembered Lord Ko's repeated warnings that she couldn't go out. So he refused Fan Yan. But Fan Yan had already made up his mind. He took Yanhi's hand and went out. Not knowing anything about the curse, the two of them did not know the consequences of their actions. They made their way to the bustling marketplace. This was the first time Yanhi had seen the outside world. Although he was excited, he was a bit timid. Luckily, Fan Yan was always with her. This made her feel very comfortable. At night, the two of them followed the crowd to the river and released the wind lanterns filled with wishes. But at that moment, Yanhi's pupil suddenly changed color. The spells surrounding Yanhi's house gradually broke. When Fan Yan looked at him, he had already disappeared. At that moment, Yanhi was in a daze. When she came to her senses, she realized that she had arrived at the wall of the palace. The unfamiliar environment made her panic. Inside the walled palace, the Empress Dowager and others were organizing a ceremony to celebrate the Crown Prince's 17th birthday. Unbeknownst to them, the princess they all thought was dead was just a stone's throw away. At that moment, Hancho suddenly felt dizzy. Then a mouthful of blood spurted out. She realized something was wrong. She ran over to check behind her ear. The mark of the curse had returned to the prince. Lord Cho also realized that Yanhi had disappeared. He called everyone to look for him, and with the curse back on the crown prince, Hancho realized that Yanhi was still alive. She followed her senses and searched for him. Through the doorway, she saw a strange girl. Hancho rushed after her, but the girl had already disappeared. It turned out that Sujun had taken Yanhi into hiding at the critical moment. He came to sell his breast enhancement potion to the courtesan, but he realized that a piece of his body had disappeared, thinking that the magical fragment had saved his life many times, so he quietly went back to look for it, and then he accidentally saw Yanhi. At that moment, Yanhi's body was already extremely weak. She fainted and fell into Su Chun's arms. Feng Yan arrived at that moment. He took her to a pavilion. Soon after, Yanhi woke up. As he watched Yanhi apologizing to himself, Feng Yan's heart felt even worse. Obviously, he was the one who insisted on bringing Yanhi out, which led to her accidental loss. He took out two bells from his pocket. He told Yanhi that if she got lost again, they could find each other by the sound of the bells. After that, he sent Yanhi back. Lord Cho was still arranging his men to look for him. The next moment, Feng Yan came back by himself. Lord Cho went up to him and asked him if he was alright. Feng Yan was confused and said he was fine. He has already sent Yanhi back to his home. As soon as he arrived home, the black vermilion bird reappeared. The two wolves that were guarding the door became vulnerable when the spell broke. The black vermilion bird flew into the house through the doorway and directly into Yanhi's body. Yanhi began to struggle in pain. Then, Yanhi's body was suspended in the air. The scene was exactly like what happened to her mother. Heiran. As the curse behind Yanhi's ear lit up, her hair turned pale. Meanwhile, the crown prince in the palace was experiencing the same thing, but the curse didn't kill them both. Everyone remembered Heiran's curse. From now on, both those who love her and those she loves will die from the curse, and Feng Yan, who loved Yanhi, became the first to fulfill the curse. The Empress looked at the crown prince's gray hair. She turned to Hancho and asked him why. Hancho knew that Lord Cho was behind it, and the only solution was to kill Yanhi as soon as possible. At home, Yanhi woke up from her coma. Her ears were ringing again with the strange screams of the black vermilion bird. She was so scared that she couldn't stop screaming, and her cursed body accidentally gained the power of a god. But since she didn't know how to control it, after the power was released, Yanhi fainted again. Then Lord Ko's subordinate, Yao Guan, arrived in time. He was asked by Lord Cho to take care of Yanhi. Looking at Yanhi who was curled up in the corner, Yao Guan couldn't help but comfort her, saying that Lord Cho had found a way to break the spell at the Green Lantern Temple. Soon, Yanhi will be able to return to his old self. She could go to the outside world and live freely. But that wasn't what mattered to Yanhi. It's because she didn't follow Lord Ko's instructions that she became like this. She was afraid that Lord Cho would hate her for that. Yao Guan quickly explained that Lord Cho wouldn't do that. But then he accidentally told her about Feng Yan's illness. After hearing that, Yanhi asked him what happened to Feng Yan. Yao Guan realized that he had said the wrong thing. At that moment, Feng Yan was in a horrible condition, cursed by his love for Yanhi. He was vomiting blood from his mouth, and he could see evil spirits roaming the world. Yanhi begged Yao Guan to take her to see Feng Yan. Though it would be a great risk, Yao Guan agreed. They tiptoed into Feng Yan's room. Looking at Feng Yan's pale face, Yanhi's heart was in a terrible state. Feng Yan woke up when he heard something beside him, but he saw Yanhi's face as a horrible evil spirit. He was so scared that he pushed Yanhi away. He pleaded with him not to come over. Yanhi thought it was his gray hair that scared him. He couldn't help but shed tears of sadness in his eyes. At that moment, Mrs. Kui came into the house and saw Yanhi. She rushed to defend herself in front of Feng Yan. She vented her anger on Yanhi. She also told him that Yanhi was cursed. Yanhi realized that everyone around him was suffering because of him. And now, he's also harming Feng Yan, whom he's always considered as his own brother. At that moment, Lord Cho arrived at the scene. Lord Cho didn't say anything when he saw the scene in front of him. He just asked his subordinates to escort Yanhi home. He told his subordinates to make sure Yanhi was safe. But as soon as Yanhi left, Hancho came over. She asked Lord Cho if he didn't kill the princess 17 years ago, but Lord Cho refused to admit it. Hancho knew he was lying, but there was nothing she could do. When she was leaving, she saw Feng Yan in the room. She could tell right away that she was under a curse, so Hancho had a plan and raised her voice to tell the truth about Feng Yan's situation. It turns out that anyone who falls in love with the princess and is cursed will die an agonizing death within half a month. Unexpectedly, Mrs. Cho overheard this. Just as Hancho walked out the door, Mrs. Cho, as expected, chased after him. Inside the house, Lord Cho has already changed his clothes. He put the last page of the Forbidden Book into the secret compartment. Then he took the Forbidden Book and went to join his subordinates. But Mrs. Cho stopped him. She had already told Poncho about Yanhi's location, because only if Yanhi is dead, Funyan will be able to escape the curse and survive. By now, Poncho had already led his subordinates to find Yanhi's hiding place. Yaguan and his men fought to protect Yanhi, but they were soon outnumbered. Except for Yaguan, all of them were killed on the spot. Poncho slowly walks up to Yaguan and tells him that this is what happens when you protect Yanhi. At that moment, Yanhi pushed out the door. Poncho told him about the curse on him. He told him that if you die, you can save everyone's life. After hearing this, Yanhi decided to face death openly. Just when Honcho was about to succeed, Lord Cho came in time and drew his sword to protect Yanhi. Yaguan gave his life to cover their escape. Lord Cho took Yanhi into hiding. He said he would distract the enemy and give Yanhi time to escape. Yanhi didn't want anyone else to die for her and decided to give her life. But Lord Cho was adamant. He then gave the Forbidden Book to Yanhi and told her to go to the Green Lantern Temple to break the curse. Only by doing so could she save the people around her, and to save the country from the curse. Lord Cho then rushed out without looking back. When the enemy saw it, they went after her. There were more and more pursuers behind him. Countless arrows and hidden weapons rained down on Lord Cho. Finally, one of them hit his leg. Lord Cho collapsed from the pain. Honcho came over. Looking at her former mentor, she was too weak to kill him. She advised Lord Cho to kill Yanhi, and then the two of them should join forces to rule the country. But Lord Cho wanted Honcho to go back with him and confess. The huge difference between them also made Honcho want to kill. In the end, she stabbed Lord Cho through the body. Yanhi was entrusted by Lord Cho with a renewed hope for life. She carried the Forbidden Book of Magic Medicine on her back and started to escape. But she was discovered by the enemy. The scene of Yanhi's escape was seen by Sujun. Because he and his mother were often insulted and beaten in their humble home, Sujun decided to take his mother with him to another country. Tonight, he followed his contact's instructions and went to the woods to buy a boat ticket. He was about to go back to join his mother when he ran into the scene in front of him. At that moment, Yanhi had been cornered by the enemy at the edge of the cliff. At the moment when the swordsman shot his bow and arrow, Sujun jumped to save Yanhi from the fatal blow. When Yanhi saw this scene, she was completely stunned. This was the first time someone had died because of her. It turns out that her existence really brings misfortune to those around her. Facing the second arrow from the enemy, Yanhi didn't dodge at all. She fell into the lake. The flowing water instantly froze. If her existence would bring misfortune to others, she was willing to die alone in the freezing water. Then the assassin reported to Honcho. They searched around the lake for a long time but couldn't find Yanhi. Honcho seemed to have guessed the result. A cursed princess can't die so easily. But at the same time, the curse behind Funyan's ear is gradually disappearing. And with it, he regained his sanity. Inside the palace, the crown prince's hair is gradually coming back. Looking at the healthy crown prince in front of his eyes, the Empress Dowager and the others are finally relieved, and they gave all the credit to Honcho. All these phenomena indicate that the princess is dead, but Honcho felt that it wasn't that simple. When she was leaving, the Empress stopped her. She asked Honcho if she didn't kill the princess 17 years ago. Otherwise, the crown prince wouldn't have become what he was. Honcho insisted that the princess was already dead. The reason why the crown prince became like that was because he was weak and was attacked by evil spirits from outside. Now that the prince has recovered, the queen doesn't need to worry. But the empress didn't believe it. She thought that Honcho had used black magic to harm the prince, so she sent an assassin to kill Honcho. Honcho seemed to sense the queen's intention to kill. She escaped with her witches beforehand. At that moment, the bad news came. The prince died in his bedchamber. The empress sat beside the crown prince with a mute expression. She slowly removed the black cloth covering the prince's face. The empress refused to believe what she saw. Honcho, who disappeared at that very moment, is undoubtedly the most suspicious. And that's exactly what happened. Just now, Honcho sneaked into the crown prince's room to take revenge on the empress. He took the prince's soul when he was not aware of it. The crown prince lost his soul and soon died. Honcho was listening to the cries in the palace. She blamed it on the queen's own fault. On the other hand, because Suchun's mother and son disappeared, Suchun's brother Suo found Suchun's best friend Donglei. He wants him to reveal the whereabouts of Sujun and his son. The timid Donglei tried to talk his way out of it, but when Suo was about to have his tongue cut out, he was finally forced to tell the truth. Sujun, who took the fatal blow for Yanhi, didn't die. It turned out that the shard in front of his chest prevented him from being hurt. As the shard broke apart, the injured chest was miraculously restored. A red mark was strangely imprinted on his chest. At that moment, he saw the ticket and remembered that his mother was still waiting at the pier. When he saw that the captain of the boat had already called for the departure of the boat, his mother's heart became even more anxious. But what he got was not Sujun. but the fierce Suwo. Seeing that Suwo had found out about her escape, the mother fell to her knees and said it was all her decision, not Su-chun's. Then she kept asking for Suwo's forgiveness, but Suwo beat her mercilessly. He pulled Su-chun's mother's hair and threw her aside, but he accidentally pushed the straw mat on the candle. By the time Suwo and his wife realized it, the fire was already out of control. The exit was blocked by the fire. Suwo tried to escape through the window. He asked Su-chun's mother to kneel down and use it as a ladder for him. But when he escaped, he didn't care if his mother was alive or dead. When Sujun arrived from a distance, although he was able to save his mother, but his mother was too weak to support herself, Sujun held his mother in his arms and agonized. At that moment, he noticed the ring slipping from her hand. The ring belonged to Suwo. The next day he buried his mother's body. Looking at the ring in his hand, Sujun vowed to avenge his mother's death. And today is Suwo's birthday. Suwo, who killed someone yesterday, is acting as if nothing happened today. At night, Sujun sneaked into Suwo's room, but he chose to stop at the most critical moment, because killing Suwo alone won't be enough to avenge his mother's death. He wanted to make the whole family, including Suwo's mother, pay for his mistake. 5 years have passed since then. At this time, Sujun is sitting at the gambling table with a group of gamblers and laughing. The reason why he is doing this is to cooperate with Suwo, who is the head of the police force, to bring these gamblers to justice. But in today's operation, Sujun heard from the other gamblers about the name of the witch. Legend has it that a white-haired witch lives in the Green Lantern Temple. Every full moon, the witch would cut out the hearts of innocent people. Recently, many people in the village have died because of this. The woman the gamblers are talking about is Yanhi. 5 years ago, she fell into the lake and was rescued, and brought her to the Green Lantern Temple. The person who saved her was Yao Guang, who is now dead. Soon after Yao Guang was killed by the assassin 5 years ago, a mysterious person put a spell on Yao Guang's body, and Yao Guang miraculously came back to life. So he saved Yanhi and renamed her Shirley. For 5 years, Shirley often dreamt of people around her dying for her. Since then, she's never been the same. All she wanted was to break the curse as soon as possible. She doesn't want anyone around her to die because of her. To break the curse, she needs to light the 108 candles in the temple before the North Star disappears. For the past 5 years, she's been helping people fulfill their wishes. The only way to light the candles in front of her is to bring the flame of the wish of the person who fulfilled it back to the temple. This is the 101st candle she's lit in 5 years. She only needs to light 7 more. Her curse will be lifted. But Hancho, who has also disappeared, has been interfering. The red-robed man behind her handed over a wooden box. Inside was a human heart. The owner of this heart is the person Shirley just helped to fulfill his wish. Hancho threw the heart into the fireplace. On the other side, the candle that Shirley had just lit went out. Because of Hancho's obstruction, Shirley hasn't lit a single candle in the past 6 months. But Shirley, who didn't know the truth, couldn't think of any solution. On the other hand, the news of the red robe digging out the heart of a man soon alerted the royal family. The emperor sent his best man to hunt down the red robe man. And this person is Feng Yan. Feng Yan inherited his father Lord Ko's loyalty. He has served the emperor for 5 years. The emperor said that he is the only trustworthy person in the world. He even wanted Feng Yan to take over Lord Ko's position many times, although he hasn't seen his father for 5 years. Feng Yan had a feeling that his father was still alive, so he refused the emperor's offer again. And the truth was just as Feng Yan suspected. Hancho was staring at the figure beside him, as if he was thinking. And that person is Lord Cho. On the other hand, just after Feng Yan left, His Majesty's chest felt a sharp pain again. He looked down and saw blood flowing down his arm and onto his hand. It turns out that the black witchcraft used by Hancho back then has been slowly eroding the country's energy. The emperor, as the head of the country, was the first to be attacked by the black voodoo. Underneath his clothes, his body was already festering, and the thorns are growing all over it. Every night he had to endure the pain and asked the doctor to remove the thorns from his back. After learning that no solution had been found, His Majesty angrily pulled the doctor by the collar and told him to find out the cause of the disease. At the same time, he threatened him not to let anyone know about this. Meanwhile, at the foot of the royal city, in a place of fireworks, a woman was sitting in front of a candle, feeling sad. Her name was Manu. Her face has been scarred since she was born, and now she's suffering because she's in love with a man. She's afraid he'll be scared off by her horrible face. Her friend Jitan told her that she could show only her good side when facing a man, but she should also show her soft and charming face to men like other women. Manu was inspired. She hurriedly asked that man out, and the man was Sujun. At this moment, Sujun was holding a glass of wine and froze on the spot, but not for Manu, but because he saw the persimmons on the table. He remembered Yanhi who asked him to help pick persimmons 5 years ago. At that moment, Manu was sitting on her side next to the candle as Jitan had taught her. When Sujun saw her, he advised her not to get too close to the candle, so she wouldn't hurt herself. Manu listened and started to pretend to be gentle and charming. Sujun understood what Manu was thinking. He sincerely told Manu not to worry about what others think. It's best to show her true colors. But Manu realized that Sujun was trying to comfort her. She couldn't hide the despondent look on her face. She remembered the 100-year-old tree that others talked about. It is said that if you make a wish under the tree, your dream will come true. Although Sujun was skeptical, Manu decided to try her luck. At night, she went to the tree and made a wish to become beautiful and hung it on the tree. She didn't notice Yao Guan hiding in the bushes and watching. After Manu left, Yao Guan took off her wishing card and handed it back to Shirley. Shirley also followed the prescription in the Forbidden Book and started to make the wishing potion. It turns out that for the past 5 years, this is how she knows other people's wishes, and then help them to make wishing potions. This time Shirley made a potion to help Manu become beautiful. Afterwards, Yao Guan took the potion to Manu. Manu looked at the potion in front of her, half believing in it. But she had the courage to drink it, and after drinking the beauty potion, the scars on her face really disappeared. Yao Guan asked Manu to light the candle in front of him. Then he gave Shirley the flame of Manu's wish. Shirley used Manu's wish fire to try to light the 101st candle again. This time, the candle in front of her didn't go out. This is her first success in half a year. At the same time, Hancho also suffered a backlash, but this time, the red-robed man failed to deliver the heart. It turns out that Feng Yan was ordered by the emperor to hunt down the red robe, so the red robe couldn't get away for a while. Feng Yan followed the clues and found Hancho's hideout. He asked Hancho if she had anything to do with his father's disappearance. Hancho didn't give him a straight answer. She promised to help him find his father, but Feng Yan needed to take Hancho to see the emperor. She knows that the emperor is suffering from a serious illness and says she can cure him. Feng Yan knew that Hancho's heart was in the wrong place. Although he wanted to see his father, but for the sake of the emperor's safety, he refused Hancho's request. When he got up to leave, he suddenly felt dizzy. Then a strange red mark flashed. It turned out that Hancho had planted the mark on him with black witchcraft to control him step by step. But Feng Yan didn't realize it. He never realized that his father, whom he had been searching for 5 years, was lying in Hancho's house. Looking at the scar behind Lord Ko's ear, Hancho fell into a memory. Once she tried to take the soul of the late king when he was sick, but she was discovered by Lord Cho and Yao Guan. A group of guards rushed in, thinking that Lord Cho and Hancho were in cahoots. Hancho took this opportunity to take away the soul of the late king. When Lord Cho arrived at his side, the late king was already a cold corpse. Yao Guan was about to kill Hancho. Lord Cho stood in front of Hancho at the critical moment. Hancho was motivated by the favor he received from the past, and because Lord Ko's 3 devils' fire was necessary to kill the princess. The time was right. She decided to bring Lord Cho back to life. Meanwhile, Manu, who has fulfilled her wish to become beautiful, has the courage to express her feelings to Sujun. She sent a letter to Sujun and asked him to meet her tonight. In the evening, Manu was excited and waited at the appointed place. But what she waited for was not Sujun, but a red-robed man wearing a mask. Yao Guan heard Manu's screams and rushed over. But he was too late. Manu's heart had already been cut out by the red-robed man. Manu's heart was thrown into the fireplace by Hancho. The candles that had been lit went out again. Shirley became disappointed. She asked Yao Guan for the reason, but Yao Guan refused to tell the truth for fear of burdening Shirley's heart. Shirley wants to go to the outside world by herself to find out what's going on. Yao Guan stopped Shirley from stepping out of the boundary. Hancho will be able to trace her breath immediately. There are less than 2 months before Polaris disappears. If the remaining 8 candles are not lit before then, Shirley will die. She's never been afraid of death, but she only wants to see the person she's been thinking about once before she dies. The person Shirley longed for was Sujun, who saved him from an arrow 5 years ago. His mother was killed by Su Wo 5 years ago. Sujun planted the seed of revenge in his heart. In the past 5 years, he's been working hard by Su Wo's side. He's been collecting evidence of Su Wo's crimes while appearing submissive. Now he finally found enough evidence to put Su Wo in jail, but he underestimated Su Wo's mother. It didn't take long for Su Wo to come out in style, and he realized Su Chun's ambition to harm him. So Su Wo bribed the officials to blame Sujun for Manu's death last night. He also said that Sujun is the red-robed man who has been on the rampage lately. When Sujun saw the situation, he rode his horse to escape, but he was knocked down by a tree branch, His body fell from the cliff when he was about to be crushed to pieces. His body was dragged by an inexplicable force. Shirley did not listen to Yao Guang's advice and stepped out of the boundary of the Green Lantern Temple. Without the protection of the boundary, Shirley is once again in contact with the outside world. The curse mark behind Feng Yan's ear lights up again. The prince's soul is also emitting a strange sound. Han Cho ordered his men to follow the trail and hunt down the princess. Shirley had just saved Sujun. Han Cho's subordinates have already found her trail. She had no choice but to bring Sujun back to the Green Lantern Temple. Yao Guang told Shirley not to step out of the boundary again. Yao Guang asked Shirley who the man she just brought back was. Shirley didn't want Yao Guang to know about her and Sujun, so she made up an excuse. Sujun slowly woke up from his coma. He realized he was in a strange place, so he looked around curiously. He saw the equipment Shirley used to make the potion of wishes. He was curious and picked up a bottle of smart water. According to the book, if you drink it, you'll be able to forget everything. Sujun scoffed at the idea, but he drank the water. Then he felt his mind swelling. Then he picked up the book next to him. He realized that he really did have the ability to forget things. The more he held the book, the more he read, but he didn't notice that the candle beside him had burnt down his sleeve. At that moment, Shirley put the scarf on her face. She didn't want Sujun to recognize her. At that time, Sujun also smelled a burning odor. He knocked over the candle. The book of magic clothes fell on the candle. Sujun saw it and rushed to help. Yao Guang heard the sound and came to help. They threw the book into the water, but the book was already burnt to a crisp. Yao Guang was furious and put a knife to Su Chun's neck. He told him that he had made a big mistake. Then Shirley arrived. Yao Guang knew Shirley's ruthlessness over the years. He turns around and holds Sujun back, but Shirley found him. Without the guidance from the forbidden spoke, Shirley had no way to break the curse. She asked Yao Guang to hang up Sujun. When Su Chun's life was hanging by a thread, he rushed to tell Shirley that he drank the smart water, so he had memorized everything in the book. Seeing that Shirley didn't believe him, he recited the contents of the book again. Sujun finally saved his life. Shirley asked him to write down everything in the book. Sujun looked into Shirley's eyes and remembered the girl named Yanhi from 5 years ago. He tried to get Shirley to take off the scarf, but Shirley just walked away. Yao Guang wanted Sujun to write his book as soon as possible. He treated Sujun with good food and drink. When Sujun was changing his clothes, Yao Guang accidentally saw a red mark on Su Chun's chest. It looked very familiar to him, but he couldn't remember where he'd seen it before. Shirley couldn't control the thoughts in her heart. She sneaked in to see Sujun while he was sleeping. She didn't realize that Sujun was pretending to be asleep. He grabbed Shirley's arm and asked if she was Yanhi. Shirley said, "You've got the wrong person." Looking at Shirley's frightened eyes, Sujun was sure she was Yanhi. He thought he didn't want to see him, and that's why she was like this. Unbeknownst to him, Shirley had been dreaming about Sujun every day for 5 years. But when it came time for them to meet, Shirley's heart flinched because she was afraid that she would bring bad luck to Sujun again. So in order to keep Sujun alive, she made up her mind not to see him again. Sujun quickly wrote down the contents of the book. Shirley made a bottle of forgetting water according to the recipe Sujun wrote down. He wanted Sujun to forget her completely. Yao Guang left with Sujun and quietly poured the water into Su Chun's kettle. But how could Sujun, who knew the forbidden spoke by heart, not smell the flavor of the water? And he saw the kite that they made together in Shirley's room. He knew that Shirley was Yanhi. If it's Yanhi who wants him to forget, he was willing to forget. On the other hand, the Emperor slowly rolled up his sleeve to reveal the wound on his arm. When Han Cho flicked his hand, the scar on the Emperor's arm disappeared. He couldn't believe his eyes. The Emperor was brought here by Han Cho's men. Han Cho said she could cure His Majesty's illness, as long as you help her rebuild the Star Chamber. Although we don't know what Han Cho's true intentions are, but in order to get rid of the pain. The next day, the Emperor announced in front of all the ministers that he would rebuild the Star Hall, and that Han Cho would be reinstated as the protector of the realm. Due to the death of the late king, the Empress has now become the Empress Dowager. Upon learning the news, the Empress Dowager knelt in front of His Majesty's chambers and begged him to reverse his decision. No one knows Han Cho's ambition better than she does. Han Cho's appearance will bring disaster to the entire royal family. In order to convince the Empress Dowager, Han Cho put the prince's soul into the Emperor while he was sleeping. Then she maneuvered him to the Empress Dowager. She watched him speak to her in the prince's voice, and then he took on the prince's form. The Empress Dowager couldn't understand what was happening, but she still took him into her arms. But the next moment, the crown prince's voice stopped abruptly. Han Cho appeared behind the Empress Dowager. She promised to return the crown prince to the Queen Dowager one day. It turns out that Han Cho used black magic to control the late king before he died. The late king appointed a collateral bloodline to succeed the throne. The current emperor is just a pawn calculated by Han Cho. When the time is right, she will let the crown princess spirit take over the Emperor's body. On the other hand, Sujun drank the water of forgetfulness that Shirley gave him and returned to the foot of the royal city. But now he has been framed as the Red Robe Man. He decided to find out the truth and clear his name, so he sneaked into the room of the deceased Manu to look for clues. Unfortunately, Fengyan came to investigate at the same time. Sujun saw Fengyan's figure through the door. When Fengyan opened the door, Sujun had already changed into a woman's outfit. He was about to run away, but Fengyan could tell by the shoes on his feet. He rushed to chase Sujun with his men. He finally caught Sujun in an alley, because Fengyan had cut the red-robed man's shoulder before. So he pulled open Suchun's clothes. Suchun's shoulder is intact, which means he's not the Red Robe, but Fengyan suspected that he might be an accomplice of the Red Robe, so he took Sujun to the prison. Meanwhile, the boundary of the Green Lantern Temple was broken because Shirley stepped out of the boundary. If it wasn't repaired in time, the consequences would be disastrous. Yabwan had to venture back to the deserted Taiyi Temple to find a way to repair the boundary, but after searching through all the books, he found nothing. Then he saw the shield on the ground. He remembered that the pattern on the shield was exactly the same as the one on Suchun's chest. So he looked through the books and found that the pattern was called the Jade Pivot Sutra. The fact that the Jade Pivot Sutra was imprinted on Sujun meant that Sujun was a complete human being. After reading the book, Yabwan wondered why he hadn't thought of it at the time. Now that Sujun has drunk the water of forgetfulness, how could he convince Sujun to protect Shirley? Yabwan had to disguise himself as a guard and sneak into Suchun's cell to tell him the story of him and Shirley. Sujun remembered what happened between them. Shirley couldn't bear to see Sujun forget her completely, so when she made the forgetting water, she deliberately absorbed the concentration. At this time, the boundary of the Green Lantern Temple was completely damaged. Hancho sensed Shirley's aura again. Fengyan was cursed again and fainted. Without the protection of the boundary, the Black Vermilion Bird came after Shirley again. She is now suffering from the Black Vermilion Bird's torture. As her body became mareborn, her black hair turned white again. Just when she was about to fall, Sujun arrived in time to save her, with Shirley protected by the boundary again. Hancho lost track of Shirley. Shirley woke up from her coma, still confused about how safe and sound she was. The next moment, she saw Suchun's figure. After realizing that Sujun is her human body, Shirley can't accept it at all because of her concern for Sujun. So she didn't want to bring her own bad luck to Sujun, and she doesn't want Sujun to be chained to her for the rest of his life for her safety. Seeing this, Yabwan rushed over to explain to Shirley, "Now, if you light the remaining candles to break the curse, you and Sujun will be free. So until then, the only way is to keep Sujun by your side." Shirley knew that Yabwan was right, so she could only agree. Then Sujun came to Shirley and proposed to show her the outside world. As long as she has Suchun's human boundary with her, Shirley will be safe wherever she goes. Shirley said she was not interested. Both Yanhi and Shirley. She wants Sujun to forget her. Sujun asked her why she didn't give herself real forgetting water at that time. Shirley was speechless and could only turn around and walk away. At that moment, Sujun saw the soul-watching water made by Shirley. He had a thought in his mind. Then he drank the soul-watching water. In order to catch the real Red Robe Man, he had to ask the dead Manu for clues. Sujun had to go out to investigate. Shirley had to follow him naturally. The two of them went to the bustling marketplace. Shirley, who had been injured many times, wrapped herself tightly like a timid rabbit. When Sujun saw this, he forcibly pulled off the clothes on top of her head. "Tell her that there are busy people here who don't care who you are, but they're likely to look at you because of your beauty." Shirley glared at him and walked forward alone. But behind him, Sujun screamed because he drank the soul-watching water, so he saw a ghost on the roadside. Sujun was so scared that he hid behind Shirley. Then they went to Manu's place again. Another ghost appeared out of nowhere. Sujun was so scared that he sat on the ground. Shirley was speechless. Such a coward, even if he saw Manu's spirit. He was so scared that he couldn't communicate. Sujun had no choice but to try to communicate with the ghost. But the ghost was obviously in a bad mood. Sujun quickly bowed and left. But when he turned to look at Shirley, she was followed by a group of ghosts. They went to the place where Manu was killed. They saw Manu's spirit again. Sujun asked her who killed her. Manu only told him that the murderer had this mark on his body. Afterwards, Manu seemed to have fulfilled her wish. She made a solemn gesture to Sujun and disappeared. Then they went to the wishing tree to see if anyone had made a new wish. But they saw that the wishing tree was covered with signs of killing trees. Shirley felt something was wrong. When she went back, she was questioned by Yagwan. Yabwan told her that Hancho had killed all the wish granters to stop her from lighting the candles. Shirley was devastated. She lifted the curse so that no one else would die because of her. She didn't expect to kill so many people instead. In the past 6 months, the candles have gone out 12 times. That means 12 people were killed by the Red Robe Man because of her. She couldn't accept it for a while. Luckily, Sujun was always there to comfort her, so Shirley regained her confidence. In order to protect the person who made the wish, she decided to deliver the potion herself. At night, Shirley went with Sujun to deliver the potion to the person who made the wish, but she was caught by a knife in the neck. The person holding the knife was Fanyan. On the other hand, in the palace, the Empress Dowager revealed the secret of the Emperor's illness. Then she defied the Emperor's opposition and put the curtain down to hear the Emperor's case. The Emperor has Hancho to protect him. For this reason, the Empress Dowager called Lord Cho back to the palace to fight against Hancho. Lord Cho also told the Empress Dowager the real purpose of Hancho. It turns out that when Hancho created the Crown Prince with the Black Curse, he had already put a curse on the whole country. The only person who can break the curse is the princess. Once the princess dies, Hancho's curse will take effect. The entire country's chakra will die with her. On the other side, Hancho is compelling the emperor with the opposite story. She blames the princess for the emperor's illness. The existence of the princess will surely kill the emperor step by step. When the emperor heard this, he couldn't hide his intention to kill the princess. He then summoned Fanyan and asked him to bring the princess here. Fanyan was surprised that the emperor knew about the princess and was in a dilemma. On one side was the emperor, whom he was loyal to. On the other side was the princess he loved. Fanyan didn't know what to choose. In fact, the princess had just met him last night. In order to investigate the Red Robe, Fanyan hung his wishing list on the wishing tree. He thought he would catch the Red Robe Man, but the one he waited for was Shirley, whom he hadn't seen in 5 years. Shirley was surprised to see Fanyan, but when she remembered Fanyan's fear when he saw her gray hair 5 years ago, she felt unable to face him. While Fanyan was still in a daze, she ran away. Fanyan was about to chase after her when he met Yao Guan, who came with Shirley. Yao Guan told Fanyan about Shirley. Fanyan realized how difficult Shirley was. He went after Shirley and hugged her into his arms. He decided to protect Shirley, but he didn't realize that the emperor was after Shirley the next day. He had to persuade the emperor not to listen to Hancho's compulsion. Unbeknownst to him, the emperor was already convinced by Hancho. On the other hand, Suwo kidnapped Su Chun's friend Jitan to lure him to show up. Not far away, Sujun happened to see him. He couldn't bear to see Jitan being implicated by him and rushed up to cut the rope. At the same time, he grabbed Suwo. At this moment, Sujun seemed to be a different person. He shut Shirley out and wouldn't let her in. Then he raised his sword to avenge his mother's death. Shirley rushed in at the critical moment. She didn't want Sujun to bleed because of such a scum. Suwo took this opportunity to run for his life. Sujun fell to his knees in pain. He hated himself for not being able to avenge his mother's death. At that moment, Suchun's mother came to him. Sujun confessed to his mother. In response to his son's apology, his mother only touched him tenderly. She didn't want Suchun's life to be filled with hatred. As long as Sujun could live a healthy and happy life, that was her greatest wish. Now that she was a dead soul, seeing Sujun again was already a gift from God. As her mother's figure faded away, Suchun's ghost characters behind his ears also disappeared. His ghostly eyes have been completely shut down. At the same time, one of the candles in the Temple of the Green Lantern was automatically lit. Hancho suffered a reversal at the same time. As more candles were lit, Hancho's reaction became stronger and stronger. Perhaps when the last candle is lit, she will be devoured by the black witchcraft and her soul will be destroyed. After learning that the candles light up automatically when no one fulfills their wishes, Hancho was very puzzled. Now that Lord Cho has joined forces with the Empress Dowager, she has to speed up her plan. On the other hand, Lord Cho, after investigating the birth dates of the Crown Prince and the Princess, he finally saw through Hancho's plan. The reason why he kept the Prince's soul is to wait until the time is ripe to use the Prince's soul to take over the Emperor's body, and then kill the Princess. Then the curse of black witchcraft will be complete. The royal family and the country will be overthrown by her. The next day, Sujun accompanied Shirley to see Fengyan but was attacked by an assassin in the bushes. Sujun hurriedly dragged Shirley to escape. When Fengyan saw them, he chased after them. When they ran into the woods, the assassin threw a smoke bomb. Sujun and the assassin couldn't see each other because of the smoke. Then Sujun and the killer both rolled down the hill. Shirley anxiously called out for Sujun. At that moment, Fengyan also rushed over, but because Sujun was too far away from her, Shirley lost the protection of the boundary. When Fengyan saw Shirley's white hair, he looked scared and kept retreating. At that moment, the red-robed man came out from behind the tree. Feng Yan wanted to fight him, but at that moment, the curse on him started to take effect and he could only fall to his knees in pain. Shirley shook the red-robed man away with her mind. Shirley used her mind to knock the red-robed man away. She turned around and tried to help Feng Yan, but he subconsciously avoided it. While Shirley was feeling sad, the red-robed man quietly got up and shot a hidden weapon with a spell behind Shirley. The red-robed person's name is Tai Yuan. She was actually Feng Yan's subordinate. When Sujun came over, the red-robed man had already taken Shirley away by force. The assassin who attacked Sujun before was Yao Guan. When Sujun questioned him, Yao Guan was silent. It turns out that Lord Cho commissioned all this in order to separate Sujun and Shirley temporarily, so that the curse on Shirley will take effect. Lord Cho wanted to know if Feng Yan would still love Shirley after seeing her gray hair, because on the last page of the Forbidden's book, it is written that the last candle can only be lit if the person who loves the princess willingly sacrifices for her. Lord Cho wants to know if his son, Feng Yan, is the last person to break the princess curse. But by now, having seen Shirley's gray hair, Feng Yan had already disliked Shirley. The curse behind the ear also disappeared. That means there is someone else who can light the last candle for Shirley. On the other hand, Shirley was brought to Hancho by the red-robed man. Hancho transferred the prince's soul into the emperor's body. Then he handed a knife to the prince and asked him to kill the princess. The prince took the knife with a mute expression, but the tip of the knife stopped abruptly in front of Shirley's body. After all, the girl in front of him was his own sister. The prince couldn't bear to kill her, but Hancho was always there to compel him. Just when the prince was determined to raise the knife again, Sujun arrived in time and took Hancho hostage. At the same time, the Jade Pivot Sutra on his chest shone brightly and formed a boundary. The crown prince's soul was thus detached from the emperor's body. Shirley's hair regained its original color. Hancho was amazed at the scene before her. She realized that Sujun was the princess's human body. At that moment, Hancho's subordinates arrived. Under the attack of the subordinates, Sujun was quickly defeated. Hancho ordered Sujun to be killed. At the critical moment, Feng Yan arrived just in time. He took Hancho hostage and let Sujun and his men go first. Sujun carried Shirley to a safe place. Shirley couldn't control herself any longer and hugged Sujun and cried. From this moment on, Sujun fell in love with Shirley. The mark of the curse appeared behind his ear. The next day, Lord Cho arranged for Shirley to meet the Empress Dowager for the first time. She looked at her mother, who hadn't been seen for more than 20 years, and felt very strange. The Empress Dowager also told Shirley's background. When Shirley learned that the Empress Dowager had abandoned her to protect the crown prince, she had a hard time accepting it. The Empress Dowager knew she had wronged Shirley. She didn't dare to ask for Shirley's forgiveness. She only hoped that Shirley could fight with her against Hancho. Only in this way can she save the country and let the prince's soul rest in peace. Saddened by the Queen Mother's request, Shirley turned away. At that moment, Yao Guan, who was waiting outside the door, inadvertently saw the mark behind Su Chun's ear. Sujun didn't know anything about it. Yao Guan pretended that nothing had happened. At that moment, Shirley came out and saw Lord Cho, whom she hadn't seen in 5 years. She jumped into Lord Cho's arms and told him how much she missed him all these years. But Lord Cho stepped back and bowed down to Shirley. Seeing that her former father was not related to her, Shirley's heart felt indescribably sad. After returning, Yao Guan told Lord Cho about Su Chun's curse mark behind his ear. Lord Cho analyzed that Sujun was protected by the Jade Pivot Sutra. That's why he was protected from the curse. Now it seems that Sujun is the last person to break the curse of the princess. On the other hand, Sujun followed Shirley to the river. He said that no matter what Shirley's identity is, he will always be by her side. At that moment, Feng Yan and Tai Yuan came over. Because of Feng Yan's behavior in the woods last time, there was a gap between them. But out of trust for Feng Yan, she still brought Feng Yan to the Green Lantern Temple. She wanted to tell Feng Yan what she had experienced in the past 5 years. After seeing the lit candles, Feng Yan promised Shirley that he would do his best to help her break the curse. He would never let her become as ugly as she was when she had gray hair. But these words were so harsh to Shirley's ears. She told Feng Yan that no matter whether her hair was gray or black, she was always Shirley. But Feng Yan said he couldn't accept Shirley's gray hair. Then he turned away coldly. After leaving, Feng Yan went to the tavern for a drink, not realizing that he had already brought danger to Shirley. Tai Yuan found out where Shirley lived and went back to report to Hancho. Hancho rushed to the Green Lantern Temple where Shirley was hiding. She plunged the dagger into Su Chun's chest without hesitation. But no matter how hard Hancho tried, the dagger couldn't penetrate any further. Only the Jade Pivot Sutra on Su Chun's chest glowed, though the boundary was destroyed by Hancho. But the boundary itself was completely broken due to Hancho's attack. Sujun fell to the ground. Without the protection of the boundary, the curse behind his ears took effect. Shirley saw her beloved being hurt by Hancho. The divine power in her body exploded like a flood. After Hancho was firmly controlled by her thoughts, Shirley grabbed her by the neck. The scene was exactly the same as when her mother Hiran was alive. An aura of death enveloped her body. Just as Hancho was about to die, Yao Guang got up to stop her. If we kill Hancho at this moment, all the candles we lit before will be destroyed. Shirley could only throw Hancho away. Then she took Sujun and left quickly. They found a cave to stay for a while. Shirley looked at the cursed Sujun and felt so guilty. She shouldn't have fallen in love with Sujun. She asked Yao Guang to find Lord Cho to help fix Suchun's curse. As soon as Yao Guang left, Sujun woke up. Now Sujun is just like Feng Yan, who was tortured by the ghosts of the dead. But unlike Feng Yan, he didn't push Shirley away. Instead, he held her tightly in his arms. This scene was just witnessed by Feng Yan, who came to the scene. Feng Yan was very upset. Then they settled Sujun in Jitan's place. Feng Yan wanted to take Shirley away and leave Sujun alone. Shirley rejected him outright. This made Feng Yan jealous. His position in Shirley's heart was even lower than Suchun's. He promised Shirley that he would kill Hancho to rid her of her ugly face. But these words hurt Shirley again. Feng Yan found Hancho and tried to kill him. It was Hancho who used a vicious black spell to make Shirley look like that. Hancho laughed when she heard it. She told Feng Yan that she learned the black spell from your father. When Hancho was still a court lady, she was brutalized by the emperor. Hancho was used as a childbearing machine. When she failed, he tried to kill her. It was the kind Lord Cho who took her in and made her his disciple. But Hancho could never let go of the pain the royal family caused her. She was uninterested in the normal spells taught by Lord Cho, but she was drawn to the powerful and evil black spell. In the end, she couldn't resist the thought of revenge and quietly took out the black spell. So if Feng Yan wants to blame him, he should also blame his father for possessing the black spell. Feng Yan didn't know what to say after hearing this. He could only turn around and leave silently. Lord Cho found Sujun in Shirley's absence and gave him a bottle of forgetting water. Drinking the water will lift the curse on him. Sujun slowly picked up the bottle but emptied it. Even if he's dying, he won't forget Shirley. And Shirley, who has been facing Hancho's pursuit, has come up with a solution. The most dangerous place is the safest place to enter the palace. On the one hand, she can avoid Hancho's pursuit. On the other hand, it would be convenient for her and Lord Cho to find a way to repair the boundary and save Suchun's life. When the Empress Dowager found out, she immediately arranged for Shirley to enter the palace. But Hancho also found out Shirley's location. Just when she and her men were coming to kill Shirley, the Empress Dowager personally welcomed Shirley back to the palace. Hancho had no choice but to stop. Shirley then entered the palace's Toichi Hall. Lord Cho set up a formation and decided to do something great for the princess. As the surrounding air currents surged wildly, Shirley's forehead appeared the lines of the Jade Pivot Sutra. Lord Cho used her own life as a price to imprint the Jade Scripture on Shirley. From now on, Shirley is her own boundary. With the completion of the boundary, Suchun's curse mark behind his ear disappeared. By the time Hancho arrived at the Toichi temple, Shirley was long gone. Only the dying Lord Cho was waiting for Hancho. Looking at the dying Lord Cho, Hancho's face was filled with sadness. But Lord Cho refused to be saved by Hancho. He held on until Hancho arrived just to tell her. He regretted saving her. Then he died in Hancho's arms. Looking at the dead Lord Cho, Hancho couldn't hold back her tears. In her heart, she had always had an inexplicable feeling for Lord Cho and couldn't bear to see Lord Cho die. She cried and cut the palms of her and Lord Cho's hands. She used her life to establish a blood curse with Lord Cho. From now on, Lord Cho and Hancho will live and die together. But Lord Cho also became a puppet controlled by Hancho. And Shirley, who sealed the curse again, not only regained her normal appearance, but also gained full control of her divine power. This time, she didn't choose to run away but came to the hostel. In front of Hancho, she took the prince's soul jar. Then she gave it to the Empress Dowager. She hoped that the Queen Mother would be able to transcend the prince's soul so that he wouldn't be tormented by Hancho. The Queen Mother knew it was the only right thing to do, but her heart was still filled with sadness. Then Feng Yan approached the Empress Dowager. She wanted the Queen Mother to give Shirley to her, so that he could take Shirley away from the palace and get away from all these troubles. The Empress Dowager was still saddened by the separation from the Crown Prince. After hearing Feng Yan's words, she was furious. At that moment, the Emperor arrived with his guards. The guards searched the house. It turned out that Hancho had just told the Emperor that the princess had sneaked into the palace. His Majesty was looking for her. He didn't expect her to come to his door, but the Empress Dowager had expected this. She told the Emperor that the princess was waiting for him in another place. Shirley had already changed into her costume. The Empress Dowager officially announced her status in front of all the officials. She could finally live her life under the name of Yanhi. The Emperor had no reason to hurt Yanhi, After that, Yanhi invited Lord Cho to pray for the prince's soul, but there was something strange about Lord Cho. It turned out that the revived Lord Cho had been completely controlled by Hancho. He also took away the soul jar when Yanhi and the others were not around, and gave it to Hancho again. The Empress Dowager looked at the disappeared soul jar and knew that it was definitely Hancho's doing. She was furious and found Hancho. Hancho didn't hide it at all. Instead, he kept irritating the Empress Dowager that she was abandoning the crown prince for the sake of the princess. The Empress Dowager was surely fooled. She said angrily that if you could have killed the princess back then, her crown prince wouldn't have died. But these words were heard by Yanhi, who arrived later. Looking at Yanhi's sad eyes, the Empress Dowager didn't know how to explain. Sujun grabbed an object behind him and hit Hancho. Hancho let go of the jar in his hand in pain. Just when everyone thought the jar would be broken, Yanhi used his divine power to levitate the jar in the air. Then Yanhi ended the jar to the Empress Dowager and silently turned away. The Empress Dowager also came to her senses. She didn't want to hurt her daughter because of her son who should have died. Then she slammed the jar on the ground. The prince's soul was finally freed. Yanhi and Sujun made dream water together. Then they gave it to the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager drank the water. In the dream, the Queen Dowager and the Crown Prince spent a wonderful time together. The Empress Dowager finally let go of her obsession with the Crown Prince. At the same time, one of the candles in the Green Lantern Temple was automatically lit. Hancho was once again affected. Now the prince's spirit is gone. The only thing that can kill the princess is Lord Cho's three devils' fire. She maneuvered Lord Cho behind the princess and tried to call out the three devils' fire to kill her. But at the last moment, Lord Cho briefly regained his consciousness. He told Yaoguan to kill him when he was manipulated by Hancho again. At the same time, he gave Yaoguan the last night of the Forbidden Book of Magic Doctors. At that moment, Fan Yan was upset about what happened during the day. He threw away the package in his hand in anger, but he didn't notice that the parcel was burning up when he waved his hand. Frustrated, Fan Yan went to the Starry Night Hall. He asked Hancho if the black spell could get a person's heart. He knew that Yanhi had fallen in love with Sujun. A feeling of abandonment by Yanhi swept through his body. Hancho took this opportunity to compel Fan Yan. He claimed that Yanhi was now under the control of the black spell. As long as the white-haired monster inside Yanhi is killed, then the goat and Yanhi will come back. Fan Yan was skeptical, but Hancho said he would prove it to him. In order to use Fan Yan as a pawn, Hancho's plot is gradually taking shape. First, she put a curse on the Empress Dowager as part of the Black Curse. As a result, the Empress Dowager fell into a coma. Yanhi was worried about the Queen Dowager's condition, so he asked Lord Cho to take her pulse. Unbeknownst to him, Lord Cho was being controlled by Hancho. Hancho took control of Lord Cho's body and told them about the Queen Dowager's condition. He told everyone that the Empress Dowager was under the curse of the black spell. To break it, she must find the spell used to cast it. Otherwise, the Empress will not live to see tomorrow night. Now, we must find the spell and destroy it. Yaoguan drew up a tracing charm for this purpose. By sticking the Empress Dowager's blood on the talisman, we can find the spell's hiding place. At night, Yaoguan and Sujun quietly went outside and lit the talisman on fire. They followed the track of the talisman closely. The location of the talisman is the Emperor's bedchamber. They searched everywhere but found nothing. At that moment, the sound of the Emperor returning to the palace came from outside the door. They hid behind the screen. Sujun saw the Emperor's wound full of poisonous thorns. Fan Yan came in and noticed something behind the screen. He pushed down the screen and caught them. During the confrontation, Yaoguan realized that the spell was on the Emperor's chest. He quietly pulled out a dagger. The Emperor panicked and thought they were here to kill him. He ordered Fan Yan to kill them. Fan Yan hated Sujun for taking away Yanhi, so he swung his sword at Sujun. The princess arrived just in time to stop him. At the same time, she saw the spell on the Emperor's chest. In order to save the Queen Mother's life, Yanhi had no choice but to stick his dagger into it. With the breakage of the spell on Huang's chest, the Empress Dowager returned to normal, but the princess was imprisoned for assassinating the Emperor. Unaware of the truth, Fan Yan saw Yanhi's crazy behavior and had to believe in Hancho's words. Then Hancho manipulated Lord Cho to come to the prison. He wanted to kill the princess with Lord Cho's three devils' fire. Yanhi could see that something was wrong with Lord Cho and she stepped back in fear. Lord Cho was trying to use his hands, but after many attempts, he couldn't trigger the three devils' fire. Hancho sensed something was wrong and picked up Lord Cho's palm. In order not to hurt Yanhi, Lord Cho had destroyed the acupuncture points on his palm while he was awake. But he overlooked one thing. The three devils' fire has been passed down from generation to generation. His son, Fan Yan, also has the power to kill the princess. And at this time, Fan Yan has not only mastered the ability to control fire, he's also under Hancho's spell. Late at night, Sujun sneaked into the palace. He promised to cure the Emperor's strange disease, because it's not a disease at all but a curse placed on you by Hancho. The Emperor became skeptical. He said he would give Sujun one day, After hearing this, Sujun asked the Emperor to lock up Hancho so that he can't use the black spell to interfere with his treatment. The Emperor then approached Hancho and asked her to spend a day in the heavenly prison. Hancho is puzzled and asks why. After seeing the Emperor's evasive gaze, she guessed that Sujun and the others must be behind it. She finally agreed to the Emperor's proposal. She was escorted into the cell by a group of guards, but Hancho didn't panic at all because she has Funyuan as her trump card. Last night, after seeing Funyuan use the three devils' earth fire, Hancho couldn't hide her excitement. She then went up to Funyuan and compelled him to use the three devils' fire to burn the monster inside Yanhi. Looking at Funyuan, who was hesitant, Hancho reminded him that if he didn't believe in it, he could ask his father. Later, when Funyuan found his father Lord Zhou, Hancho controlled Lord Zhou and said the same thing. He also told Funyuan to follow Hancho's instructions from now on. Funyuan was puzzled by the change in his father's behavior, but he still chose to believe him. When Sujun found out that Hancho had been imprisoned, he started to prepare to break the curse for the Emperor. The only thing needed to break the curse is to find the seal and remove it. But strangely enough, after looking at the Emperor's body, Sujun couldn't find the curse mark. The Emperor was furious and thought that Sujun was playing a trick on him, that the one day he promised was not yet up. The Emperor could only suppress his anger for the time being. Sujun found Yaoguang with his doubts, and after searching through many books, what the Emperor was under wasn't ordinary witchcraft. It's a form of black magic. This witchcraft doesn't need a spell seal as a medium. It only requires sound to cast a spell. Then Sujun found Lord Zhou. He asked him if he knew how to break the spell. Lord Zhou, who was controlled by Hancho, didn't know anything. But in the end, he managed to regain his consciousness and only said the forbidden spoke of magic medicine before Hancho took over control of his body again. Then Sujun and Yaoguang sneaked into the heavenly prison. They learned from Yanhi that the spell can be lifted by making the Emperor drink the water of truth from the forbidden spoke of magic clothes. Sujun and Yaoguang made the water of truth and presented it to the Emperor. That the Emperor drank it and became breathless and in pain. It turned out that Hancho controlled Lord Zhou to poison the water while Sujun and Yaoguang were away. The angry Emperor arrested Sujun and wanted to execute him and Yanhi together. The Empress Dowager came to plead for mercy, but to no avail. Seeing this situation, Sujun had the bright idea to stimulate the Emperor with words. He spoke of the Emperor's inner fears and insecurities. No one in the royal family truly believed him. When the Emperor heard these words, he couldn't control his emotions. As the word truth appeared behind his ear, the water of truth began to work. He revealed how much he wanted to be a good emperor, that he had been suffering from a strange disease and he was a collateral blood relative. Everyone around him was eyeing him. The throne was like a mountain in his heart. After saying this, the Emperor began to cough violently. Then a black mist protruded from his mouth. And this is exactly the speech spirit technique planted by Hancho. The Emperor rolled up his sleeves and his scars disappeared. At this time, a candle in the Green Lantern Temple was lit automatically, and the spell was reversed on Hancho. Facing the Emperor's questioning, Hancho knew he couldn't defend himself. The Emperor ordered him to be put in the heavenly prison to be punished by splitting his body into 5 pieces. And Yanhi was reinstated as a princess. Just when everyone thought it was over, a figure broke into the prison in the darkness of the night and killed all the guards and then rescued Hancho. This person is Funyuan. After saving Hancho, he broke into Yanhi's room and kidnapped him. Sujun saw him and rushed after him, but Funyuan had already fled on horseback. He only left Sujun a concealed weapon with a note. Then he took Yanhi to a simple cabin. Yanhi could never imagine that Funyuan would do such a thing to him. Funyuan went out of the hut. He summoned the 3 devils' fire at the door of the hut. At that moment, Hancho also came over. She watched as Funyuan lit up the 3 devils' fire. Soon the whole cabin was burning. Hancho finally smiled evilly at her success, but she soon realized something was wrong. Her body didn't get better. The poisonous stings on her arms hadn't disappeared. She suspected that the princess hadn't been burned at all, that the burning of the 3 devil or flame prevented her from leaning forward. Funyuan was watching Hancho's face the whole time. When the wooden house was burned to the ground, Hancho went to check and found no body of the princess. Hancho angrily asked Funyuan what was going on, but Funyuan started to play dumb. At that moment, he realized the true nature of Hancho. It turned out that during the meeting with his father, Lord Zhou briefly regained consciousness and reminded Funyuan not to believe what he said. At that moment, Yanhi had already been saved by Sujun. The note Funyuan left for him was the location of Yanhi's hideout. Hancho was furious when her trick was foiled and went back to her place. She asked Lord Zhou to break the boundary inside Yanhi's body, so that the world could see how horrible the princess looked when she went gray. Lord Zhou then asked Yanhi out. The unaware Yanhi was unprepared. but she soon realized Lord Cho's strange behavior. As she watched Lord Cho approaching her step by step, Yanhi used her divine power to repel him, but it didn't hurt Lord Cho. He was going to use his divine power again, but due to the imminent disappearance of the North Star, the divine power in her body was also sporadic. Lord Cho put her hand on Yanhi's head to break the boundary she set up earlier. As the boundary became weaker and weaker, Sujun was once again hit by the curse. He guessed that Yanhi was in danger. He told Yao Guan to leave him alone and go save him first. They rushed to Tai Yi Hall to stop Lord Cho, but they were no match for him. At the critical moment, Feng Yan arrived in time and knocked Lord Cho out with the three devils' fire. Then they tied Lord Cho to a chair. In order to awaken Lord Cho's own consciousness, Feng Yan found Han Cho and held him back, so that he couldn't distract himself from controlling Lord Cho. Lord Cho was able to regain his consciousness for a short time. Sujun asked how to abolish Han Cho's black spell. Lord Cho said that the origin of the black spell would be attached to the object he first touched. When Han Cho first touched the black spell, he was holding a short sword. If the sword is burned with the three devils' fire, Han Cho would lose the black spell completely. But Lord Cho reminded Sujun that the black curse is good at utilizing the evil thoughts in human hearts. When he touches the sword, he must be firm in his thoughts or he'll be corrupted by the black spell. On the other side, Feng Yan is already fighting with Han Cho. He burned Han Cho's arm with three devils' fire. Han Cho also stabbed his chest with his short sword. Because of the black spell power on the short sword, Feng Yan soon lost consciousness and fainted. Then Yanhi asked Han Cho out. Sujun came to Han Cho's house to search for the sword. He also saw Feng Yan fainted here. The box behind him opened automatically. Inside was the sword. Sujun held the sword firmly in his hand. At that moment, all the negative emotions came over him like a tidal wave. He remembered the humiliation he suffered with his mother. Sujun crouched on the ground and remained silent for a moment. Then he gripped the short sword next to him again. At that moment, Suchun's pupils changed color. Han Cho on the other side also realized something was wrong. She turned around and left in a hurry. When Han Cho returned, she found Sujun sitting on the ground with a blank look on his face. Yanhi and the other two arrived later and looked at Sujun with horror. While Han Cho was pleased with himself, Sujun suddenly burst out laughing. It turned out that he had resisted the black spell with his strong will. Feng Yan also appeared behind him and shined his hands with luck to create the three devils' fire. Sujun throws his short sword into the fire as Han Cho looks on in shock. Han Cho went to stop him but was burned by the fire. Then Han Cho began to struggle in pain. As a mouthful of blood spurted out, the black spell left her body completely. Without the black spell, Han Cho was thrown into the heavenly prison like a tiger with its teeth pulled out. The whole royal family was revitalized. The Empress is now pregnant with the dragon seed. This made the Empress smile. The scene in front of her felt like it had happened before, that after more than 20 years of hardship, she has changed from a young empress to the Empress Dowager. All she wants now is for the country to be in good health and the royal family to be stable and peaceful. Sujun and the others can finally put down the stone in their hearts after solving the tumor of Han Cho. But Yanhi's heart still felt uneasy, because Lord Cho, who was controlled by Han Cho, was never found. At night, a figure crept into the queen's chambers and placed the black spell left in the incense burner next to her. Yanhi arrived just in time. When the masked man saw it, he turned around and ran away. This man was Lord Cho, who was controlled by Han Cho, although he lost the black spell. But Han Cho knows that what's more evil than the black spell is the human heart. She ordered her subordinates to put up notices outside the city announcing that Princess Yanhi will attend today's mountain and river festival. It's been rumored that the royal princess is the white-haired witch of Xiaodoji Temple. When the people saw the posters, they rushed to the scene to see the real Yanhi. But just then Lord Cho arrived with Han Cho's men. The emperor and the others were taken under control. Seeing that Han Cho's subordinates were aiming their bows and arrows at the innocent people, Yanhi was about to use his divine power but was stopped by the Queen Mother. She didn't want the world to see that Yanhi was different from normal people, but Lord Cho seemed to be prepared. He ordered his men to aim their arrows at Sujun. When the people saw this, they shouted that the princess was a monster. The emperor was also shocked by Yanhi's behavior. When Sujun saw this, he grabbed Yanhi and ran away. The two of them fled to the Green Lantern Temple for temporary shelter. But the world outside is in chaos. Many people have gathered outside the royal city. They even blamed the princess for the drought and diseases that have plagued the land over the years. The people's voices were loud and clear. The emperor could hear it clearly from the hall. He had no choice but to see Han Cho and ask her what she was up to. But Han Cho asked the emperor if he couldn't hear the people's voices. Killing the princess is the only way out for the emperor. The only person who can kill the princess is himself. In order to keep the throne, the emperor was once again under the spell of Han Cho. and she recommended the best person to kill the princess. As expected, it's Feng Yan. Feng Yan begged the emperor not to fall under Hancho's spell, but the emperor has already sent troops to capture the princess. At the same time, Hancho and his men arrived at the Green Lantern Temple. Luckily, Sujun and his men had already escaped, although the journey was hard. But the two of them had a rare moment alone. When they were hungry, they fished together. When they were cold, they made a fire together. Yanhi cherished the time he spent with Sujun. Because of her curse, she doesn't know how long she has left. Sujun also fell into memories after hearing this. From the first time they met, Sujun remembers every scene very clearly. He was convinced that the two of them would be able to break the curse on Yanhi against all odds, and then they would live a quiet life like today. While talking, Yanhi had already fallen asleep on Suchun's shoulder. He touched Yanhi's forehead, and his face showed a little sadness. He knew that Yanhi didn't fall asleep because of sleepiness, but because of physical weakness. Because of the imminent disappearance of the North Star, Yanhi's body was getting weaker and weaker. During the day, she had several attacks of pain. The attentive Sujun saw it but could only pretend not to see it and smile. At that moment, Hancho's subordinates slowly approached their location in the night. They couldn't escape Hancho's clutches in the end. The weak Yanhi couldn't use his power. Seo Jun fell from the cliff to protect him, but he didn't survive. At the critical moment, Feng Yan arrived in time to save him. When Yanhi woke up, he cried and begged Feng Yan to look for Sujun. Feng Yan also found Sujun injured by the river. But when they returned to the cave, Yanhi was nowhere to be found. By now, she had already made it to the palace. Looking at the three people in front of her, she said angrily that she just wanted to live a quiet life with Sujun. Why do they keep staring at her? Hancho said, "This is your destiny. The selfish royal family gave birth to you by means of a black spell. Now you should be the victim of the royal family." After hearing this, Yanhi couldn't hold back his anger any longer and rushed up to Hancho and grabbed him by the neck. At that moment, it was as if they saw the courtesan Heiran. The Empress Dowager and the Queen Dowager tried to stop them, but they were knocked away by Yanhi. Just when Hancho was about to be suffocated, a familiar voice came from behind him. It was Sujun. Seeing that Sujun was alive, Yanhi let go of Hancho and hugged Sujun tightly. Then the guards came and caught them. The emperor decided to kill him as soon as possible. The only person who could kill him was Feng Yan. He went into the prison and comforted Yanhi, telling him not to be afraid. He won't hurt him no matter what. The reason why Feng Yan dared to say such a sure thing, because he was ready to die. Once he dies, there will be no one in the world who can kill him. But the pain in his chest from Hancho's cut was immense. He forced himself to open the cap, but Hancho's subordinates stopped him in time. Hancho couldn't allow Feng Yan to die at this time, because the wound on Feng Yan's chest had some black spell ore left in it. This became a means for Hancho to control Feng Yan. The next day, in front of a crowd of people, Yanhi was tied up on the execution table. Beside him, Feng Yan looked at Hancho. After receiving instructions, Feng Yan walked mechanically to the pile of firewood. He raised his hands and lit a three-monster fire. As the fire spread rapidly, Yanhi began to struggle in pain. At the same time, the sky, which was once clear, suddenly became cloudy. Wisps of black spells came out of the incense burner and entered the queen's body. When the emperor saw the empress struggling in the air, he remembered what the empress had said. If the princess dies, the black spell will spread throughout the royal family. He then realized that it was all Hancho's plot. On the fire, Yanhi struggled desperately and finally broke the spell on her body. The boundaries inside her body began to work again. Yanhi's spell also dispersed Feng Yan's evil energy, and he came to his senses. Looking at the weak Yanhi on the fire, he couldn't believe that he had done all this. He had hurt Yanhi after all. At that moment, Sujun arrived with the emperor's guards and clashed with Hancho and the others. Sujun rushed into the fire and saved him from the fire. He brought him back to Cheondang Temple. Looking at his beloved's weakened form, Sujun couldn't help but cry. He blamed himself for not being able to protect him. Yanhi tenderly stroked Suchun's cheek. Sujun didn't want to let Yanhi go back to the palace, but the kind-hearted Yanhi insisted on going back. Although the black spell left the queen's body, but the fetus in her womb was not saved. Looking at the empress trying to hide her grief, His Majesty felt a great deal of remorse in his heart. All this is because he believed in Hancho's spell again and again. After seeing this, Sujun and his wife planned to make the empress a bottle of heart's peace water, and asked the emperor to give it to the empress. They hoped that the queen's pain could be eased after drinking the water. The emperor thanked them for their kindness and told Yanhi that Feng Yan had resigned from his post and was leaving the palace. After hearing this, Yanhi rushed to find Feng Yan, but Feng Yan would not open the door for him because of his guilt. Then Yanhi met the Empress Dowager again. She found the Empress Dowager and said, she no longer hated her and said goodbye to the Empress Dowager. She plans to leave the palace with Sujun to live outside. With tears in her eyes, the Empress Dowager urged Yanhi to break the curse and live the life she wants to live. Yanhi bowed deeply to the Empress Dowager and said goodbye. Sujun saw that Yanhi was depressed after his return and quietly made a bottle of bright pure water and gave it to Fengyan. He hoped that the water would help Fengyan alleviate his guilt and reunite with Yanhi. After Fengyan drank the water, his past with Yanhi came back to him. In the past 20 years, he had said countless times that he would protect Yanhi. This was because his father had told him when he was young that he must protect his sister. When he heard his father's words, young Fengyan stubbornly regarded them as a task that had to be accomplished. He then went to the Green Lantern Temple and found Yanhi to apologize to her. What he thought was love and protection for Yanhi for so many years was in fact a twisted sense of duty in his heart. He wished Yanhi happiness in the future. The two of them finally regained their deep brother-sister bond. The candles in the temple were also lit again. Hancho suffered a backlash as a result. She braced herself and came to Lord Cho's side. Without the black spell to keep him alive, Lord Cho was about to die. She then ordered her subordinates to leave Lord Cho in the wild to die. Although she said so, she already had a plan in mind. She asked her men to lead Fengyan to Lord Cho, because only the wound on Fengyan's chest still has some black spell left, and this is the only way to save Lord Cho's life. After seeing Fengyan take Lord Cho away, Han Cho's heart gradually relaxed. Lord Cho absorbed the black spell from Fengyan's chest. This not only cured Fengyan, but also extended Lord Cho's life for a short time, because he still had something he had to do. At night, Sujun and Yanhi sat together to look at the stars. There are still 3 days before the North Star disappears. Yanhi's body was already extremely weak. Sujun promised to light the last 3 candles in these 3 days. Lord Cho asked Sujun out alone and handed him the last page of the Forbidden Book. He told him that only a person who loves the princess and is willing to sacrifice himself can light the last candle. Lord Cho said he would respect Suchun's choice. Sujun returned to the Temple of the Green Lantern in despair. He stared at Yanhi's cheeks and grew lost in thought. In the end, he couldn't grow old with Yanhi. He didn't tell Yanhi about this but planned to spend the last 3 days with her. He quietly burned the last night of the Forbidden Book. Then he walked silently to the sleeping Yanhi and looked at her with tender eyes. In the past, Sujun, who came from a humble background, could not find a reason to live. It was Yanhi who gave him encouragement. At the same time, it was Yanhi who gave him hope to live. He leaned down and kissed Yanhi's forehead. In this way, he said goodbye to her in advance. The next day, his friend Jitan delivered 2 packets of medicine to the temple. Sujun sniffed them out and realized that they were medicine for knife wounds. Of the 3 of them, only Yao Guan suffered a stab wound. Sujun and his friend Jitong smiled at each other when they saw Jitong's evasive gaze. It turns out Jitong likes Yao Guan, but he didn't want to show his face. Yao Guan didn't realize it either. They were ready to help Jitong, so they made courage water together and gave it to Jitong. They hoped that she would be brave enough to express her feelings, but Jitong told Sujun she saw Suwo sneaking around. It turns out Suwo had defected to Hancho before. Now Suwo, who committed a felony, is going to escape by boat. Sujun said he doesn't care about Suwo anymore, but he still went to find Suwo. At that moment, Suwo was about to escape by boat. Sujun advised Suwo to turn himself in and face his mistakes. After atoning for his sins, he should live a dignified life. And he also gave Suwo a bottle of water to wake him up and hoped that Suwo would be reminded of his mistake. Suwo drank the water and realized his mistake. The guilt he felt made him turn himself in to be punished for his mistake. Then he started to live a righteous life. On the other hand, Jitan drank the courageous water and found Yao Guan to express his love bravely. Yao Guan was shocked by Jitan's appearance. Jitan thought Yao Guan didn't like him and turned around to leave, but Yao Guan stopped him. It turns out that Yao Guan has always loved Jitan in his heart. With the help of Yanhi, Yao Guan and Jitan got together, thanks to Suwo and Jitan. Now there is only 1 candle left. Sujun and Yao Guan both had bitter smiles on their faces, because they knew that Sujun would have to light this last candle with his life. The next day, Sujun went out with Yanhi. He told Yanhi that he had found the person who could light the last candle and that Yanhi didn't need to worry. He told him not to worry, and to live happily with him for the rest of the day. Afterwards, they went to a bustling market to try out the street's jewelry. They also bought materials to make kites. Then they cooked together. They went to the mountain and flew kites together. At the end of the day, under Yao Guan's preparation, the two became husband and wife by worshipping heaven and earth. Since the Forbidden Book of Magic Doctors doesn't record the practice of sacrificing water, the mysterious man who saved Yao Guan's life appeared again. He sighed at the injustice done to the 2 of them. He then placed a bottle of sacrificial water beside Yao Guan. Yao Guan also gave the water to Sujun. Late at night, they went to the mountain to look at the stars. Seeing that the time of the disappearance of the North Star was getting closer and closer, Yanhi couldn't bear the pain and fainted. Sujun took out the sacrifice water he had prepared and drank it with tears in his eyes. Then he laid down beside Yanhi. At that moment, the North Star had completely disappeared from the sky, but Ya Guang realized that the last candle was not lit. He rushed to the mountain and saw Sujun lying alone on the ground. Sujun was woken up by Ya Guang. Looking at the bag of sacrificial water, he had a bad feeling in his heart. It turns out that last night Hongzhou quietly found Yanhi and told her the last page of the Forbidden Book of Magic Doctors. Yanhi also knew that Sujun was going to die for her, so Yanhi secretly switched Suchun's sacrifice water. By now, Yanhi was already alone in the forest. She drank the real sacrifice water in her hand. The last living bamboo in the temple was finally lit. Hongzhou's life was coming to an end. This woman, corrupted by hatred, was unable to settle her grudge. Lord Zhou then carried Hongzhou into the three devils' fire lit by Feng Yan. Only Feng Yan was left kneeling and crying in pain. Soon after, Sujun took the medical exams with Yanhi's wish and became the imperial doctor of the palace. He told the emperor what was on his mind. He told the emperor that he was going to write a medical book so that the world would not be plagued by diseases. The emperor agreed with Suchun's idea. Soon it was 40 years later. By now, Sujun had become an old man. He had finally finished writing his medical book. This book is called the Book of Eastern Medicine. It has a very important place in the history of Joseon. After completing the book, Sujun took his young apprentice out to collect medicine. He said he was going to get some water and then turned around and ran away. When Sujun looked back, he saw a kite in the distance. The kite's shape made Sujun feel a sense of déjà vu. He realized something. He looked in the direction of the kite. Finally, he saw a simple wooden house in a clearing. The moment he passed through the wooden door, Sujun felt like he was back in his youth. Looking at the familiar scenes around him, Suchun's eyes became moist without realizing it, and the girl he had longed for 40 years appeared behind him.